So we've heard a lot this summer from different voices on the nuclear accord, proposed accord between Iran and the U.S. We've heard from the neocons, we've heard from Obama presidential candidates, the Senate, experts of various stripes. But I'm excited to have you guys here because you've studied the deal and you certainly know the politics around it. You know the broader Middle East context. Frankly, you also bring the experience of being Iranian Americans and kind of like at the crux of this relationship between our respective countries over the past 40 years. I mean, you've dabbled in details too, but you've also talked about those broader themes. I mean, I think after the deal was announced, you called it a new dawn, which is the kind of thing I would always feel a little leery about writing, because if it turns out not to be a new dawn, you look like the guy who was wrong. Did you have any hesitancy about describing it that way?
Maybe I'll let my emotions get the better of me there. It's pretty hard not to view it that way, though, because even if this thing falls apart, it's just the idea that it was struck, that Congress wasn't able to bring it down. It's kind of it's just sort of amazing that it even came this far. Like, that in and of itself is an accomplishment, even if next year the deal falls apart and Iran dashes and builds a nuclear weapon, and we all get a little egg on our face. Just that we were able to get where we've gotten, the fact that we sat down for 2 years at the table with this kind of arch enemy of America is pretty remarkable. And there is, I wrote about this right after the deal too. Like, I have to say, there is kind of something kind of special about being an Iranian American in this case, right? Because I've never set foot in Iran, but I have kind of this double identity. And I don't know if Nima has experienced this as much. She's also an Iranian American. Just because, like, I'm not sure if Nima as a name is as much of a tell. Maybe it is. I don't know.
It's a pretty big tell.
Yeah, it's a pretty big tell. I mean, Shirazi is like dead giveaway. But it's like, I wouldn't say I quite had shame about being Iranian, but certainly some people did. And it's like, I spoke to this woman who is no friend of the regime, right? She'd actually been imprisoned by the Iranian regime. And she was like, somebody asked me the other day where I was from, and I said Iran, and they said, oh, that country. And like, that's the kind of attitude that we have this split identity, right? It's these two countries that we belong to that are arch enemies, and like, yes, you have two countries, but it's not this isn't like being a French American or something, right? Like, there's a tension there, and you never quite get to be part of both. Like, Iranians in Iran don't really view me as an Iranian, and then like the circles I run in, I'm totally American, but there are still some instances where you run into things where you're like seriously, TSA, like, I was born in Los Angeles, for God's sake, and you're gonna hold me up at the airport every time I show up. So it's just like the idea that these two countries, which haven't talked seriously about anything in so long, can get together, and it opens up all these other possibilities. The civil war in Syria, everything that's happening there. We've known from the beginning of that war that Iran was going to be a major part if it was to end with any kind of diplomacy, but that just seemed off the table because we were in the middle of, on the cusp of going to war with Iran itself. And so now you see this other thing, and it's like, oh wait, maybe it's possible to work something out there. I'm not saying, that's one where I don't want to get ahead of myself on. The most amazing thing about Nima.
I'm about to bring that up.
Okay.
Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that you're like.
What is the most amazing
thing? His name is Nima Shirazi, which
hair.
like has no hints of it, but his mom is a Brooklyn Jew.
That's right.
And so when people are like, oh, you just hate Jews to Nima, it's like, he's the real fucking deal.
Like, talking about bombing yourself.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But you never pull that card out.
I never pulled the card out. I think that this issue and the idea that Iranian Americans view it one way, Jewish Americans view it a different way, Israeli Jews view it a different way, et cetera, winds up being really reductive and really tribal at a base level. My name, Nima Shirazi, sounds very, very Iranian. My middle name is Daniel. My mother's family comes from a Eastern European Jewish background. My father is, from a Muslim Iranian background. I tend not to talk about the fact that I, have Jewish ancestry, just like I don't talk about the fact that I have Iranian ancestry. It just happens to be my name, and I write about what I write about from the perspective that I write about it.
But you don't think that being Iranian at all affects the way
it's
you look at this
probably
stuff?
why I focus on this, why it matters to me.
But not the views.
But I don't think that it's because of the views, and I think you can see that because there's a gigantically wide scope of Iranian perspective on the government of Iran, the revolution, the Iran talks, our relationship with Iran. I mean, there is no monolithic Iranian community, just like there's no monolithic Jewish community.
Yeah, it's like that old joke about, I always tell people that joke about 2 Jews and 3 opinions.
Do it.
Applies totally to Iranians too. It's
Right.
like,